I warmly welcome all participating estate agents to the EAAB's 2017 CPD program, which is being presented by contact sessions, e-learning, and also a new innovation that we're hoping to launch in the second part of the 2017 year. I'm really gratified at the wholehearted support from professional estate agents that the EAAB continues to receive where CPD is concerned. The CPD requirement is prescribed by the EAAB both as the statutory regulator of the sector and also in fulfillment of its professional body obligations. It is to be underscored that CPD is an ongoing process that will continue throughout the career of a professional estate agent. CPD indeed is essential for ensuring the continued knowledge, competence, and retention of skills in any profession, including, of course, estate agency. It is axiomatic that the desired outcome of the major objective of any CPD program is threefold, namely, to protect the consuming public, to safeguard the professionalism of the sector, and to ensure that a successful professional career of choice for estate agents. It has always been self-evident to me that the estate agency sector is a dynamic and continually evolving one. Remaining informed of and being conversant with such factors as the latest skills, knowledge, and industry trends is therefore essential if real estate professionals are to remain relevant, meaningful, and probably just as importantly, successful. I am convinced that the EAAB CPD program, as it has developed over the past 2 years, is sufficiently focused to provide the necessary tools and content to ensure professional property practitioners are able thereby to develop and enhance their professional skill sets in relation to both long-term career plans and identify professional goals in an exciting career of choice. CPD is an essential mechanism that facilitates the demonstration by property practitioners of their ongoing commitment to keeping themselves informed of the sector best practice, whether for the benefit of the stakeholders, consumers, peers, and frequently current and potential future employers. In my experience, some of the many benefits attaching to the EAAB CPD program include the fact that CPD ensures the capability of estate agency professionals to keep pace with current standards and developments within the estate agency sector. CPD ensures that practitioners maintain and enhance the competence, knowledge, and skills needed to deliver a professional service to clients, stakeholders, and the community at large. CPD ensures that the knowledge of professionals is always relevant and current, and that practitioners are made aware of new developments and changing trends and directions in the estate agency sector, bearing in mind the increasingly frenetic pace of change that is currently being experienced. CPD not only assists professionals in the sector to make a meaningful contribution to estate agency in general, but also to become more effective in the workplace so that they may advance their careers, move into new positions, and ultimately lead, manage, influence, coach, and mentor others entering into the sector. CPD helps property practitioners to remain interested and interesting by creating and focusing on potential new possibilities, knowledge, and skills areas. CPD can inculcate a deeper understanding of the professionalism of estate agency sector and encourage a greater appreciation of the implications, aspects, and impacts of the services rendered by property practitioners. Interactive CPD advances the body of knowledge and competencies within the estate agency profession. CPD invariably results in increased public trust, confidence in, and respect for individual professionals in general as well as the estate agency profession in particular. CPD inevitably contributes to improved consumer protection as well as a sustainable increase in the economy as a whole. It must be accepted that CPD represents a career-long obligation for for all practicing estate agency professionals. I believe that on a cost-benefit analysis, there can be little doubt that the benefits accruing both to estate agents and the consumers they serve resulting from the professionalization of this sector far outweigh the costs that are necessarily incurred. The EAB, with this in mind, will continue to strive to ensure that CPD compliance is not regarded as an onerous obligation imposed upon estate agents, but rather as a meaningful and valuable learning experience that provides food for thought and further inquiry and research while simultaneously enhancing the professionalism, competencies, and productivity of property practitioners. I am confident that our CPD program for 2017 will meet these goals and obligations. In conclusion, I extend my very best wishes for the prosperity and success to our professional practitioners in 2017. I hope and trust that they will find CPD to be interesting, relevant, and helpful as they continue to play their vital part in advancing the professionalism of their careers in the estate agency sector.
Good day, my name is Tebogo Thamaga from a company called TT Endeavor Training. TT Endeavor Training is a training and development consultancy that deals with HR training and soft skills training. On the screen here you will see my details, which is my email address, my cell phone number, and also our website, which you can visit to view more of our training and services that we provide. Today I'm going to be talking to you about I'm going to be giving you a general overview in terms of the principles of business management. The background in terms of management, we say, is a process of reaching organizational goals by working with and through people and other organizational resources. Now, management has the following three characteristics. It is a process or a series of continuous and activities, and it involves and concentrates reaching organizational goals. It reaches these goals by working with and through people and other organizational resources. And management functions. Today it is widely accepted that management perform four main functions, normally known as a block. This includes planning, and under planning we get forecasting. It also has leading, which is also influencing, and we've got organizing, and we also have controlling. When we look at the first one, which is planning, it involves choosing the tasks that must be performed to attain organizational goals and outlining how the task must be performed, by who and by when. Now, under planning, we also have got forecasting, which involves examining the future and then making a plan of action. We know the old age saying that says failure to plan is planning to fail. So this makes us think, or actually be in the know, that planning is the most important aspect of a management function, because if you fail to plan, then chances are you're going to find yourself running into crisis, and you're going to be a crisis management mode and not having enough time to plan. It is the most crucial part of the management, and it requires active participation of the entire organization. Thus, planning should be coordinated in different levels. We know that in our organizations we've got different levels in terms of the hierarchy of the organization, and all the levels need to maintain their planning so that it is aligned to the strategic goals of the organization. And all planning should, in a way, enable the organization to reach its objectives and its strategic goals. After planning, we've got leading, which is also known as influencing. Now, influencing can be defined as guiding the activities of the organization members in the direction that helps the organization move towards the fulfillment of its goals. Now, when you look at leading, this is really where we talk about the leadership roles and how leadership influences or motivates the staff members. It's important that leaders understand how their employees are motivated. So for this particular element in terms of the management function, communication becomes clearly important. So managers can be able to communicate in a manner that influence the employees positively in terms of achieving the strategic goals of the company. And as we say that we lead by example, so it's important that when we're leading and we're communicating and we're influencing, we bear in mind that whatever we do as leaders, it's actually setting an example in terms of how the employees then will behave within our organizations. Then we look at organizing, which involves the grouping of tasks into departments and the assignment of authority with adequate responsibility and allocation of resources across the organization. Now that we have planned in terms of what our strategic goals are, what we want to achieve, we need then to organize to say which department does what, which groups does what. So organizing necessitates that we put resources into place, resources into departments, resources into groupings or individuals. And there's also an element of assigning or delegating authority to different resources, to different departments and to different individuals within the organization, so that it enables them to take necessary actions towards the achievement of the strategic goals. Assigning the tasks to develop in the planning stage to various individuals or groups within the organization. The organization is to create a mechanism to put plans into place. And now here it's also important that people within the organization are aware of the value chain when we're organizing, to say a department's input could be another department's output. So the value chain becomes important in terms of the organizing of the different departments, in terms of which department does what task and how that particular task impacts on the next level or on the next department. When you look at your sales and your marketing and your HR, there's got to be some synergy in terms of the mechanisms that are put in place, so that there is a synergistic and a systematic manner in terms of the way the organization is run. And the left hand should be able to tell what the right hand is doing, because without that synergy and without that knowledge of the value chain, things do tend to fall apart. So it's important that within the organization we do it in such a way that every department knows exactly what is expected of them, and they know what the impact of their behavior or the impact of their output has on the next department. We also have controlling, and this is about monitoring organizational progress towards goal attainment. So within this element of controlling, we need to set standard in terms of how do we want to achieve the quality of the products or the services that we want to provide. Now we gather information that measure performance, compare present performance to pre-established performance norms, and determine the next action plan and modifications. Now controlling is also an ongoing process. We don't say we've done this at the beginning, then we don't do it, because as organizations continue to grow, now and again we need to also modify how we do things, and we also need to improve in terms of the performance standards that we set for ourselves as organizations. Now moving on to the general functions of business. It is commonly known that every business will have different structures and different operational management structures, starting with top management. And the responsibility of top management is really to put the strategic objectives of the organization in terms of the goals that the organization will want to attain. We've got also operations, and operations is actually the doers of the strategic goals. Now that we've got goals, somebody needs to go and implement the goals, and you find that in this tier in terms of the management structure. And we've got the sales and marketing. Now the sales and marketing would be that department that actually sells the service or the product that we have. We also have finances, and finance would be the ones that determine the price of our service, the price of our product, but they also deal with your invoicing, and then also deal with the bookkeeping and making sure that the organization is run in a sound financial environment. We also have human resources, which is responsible for recruitment of employees, responsible actually also for the well-being, responsible for labor relations and other things that are personnel related. And we've got other departments, which will include your legal department, your IT department, and your logistics. Now, when you look at all the business functions of these organizations, they're actually related. So one task is actually done, and that task can actually be cascaded to different levels. Now, this is a manner in which operations, or rather the functions, should be structured so that there is synergy and that value chain is then realized within the running of the organization. Now, there's also one important aspect in terms of the management functions, which is how we manage our resources in an environment, especially an environment where it's changing all the time. When managing, you need to make certain that there is a good probability that what you do will be successful. Managing resources is a crucial part of business success, and the resources are popularly defined or referred to as the 5 M's, which is money, manpower, minutes, machinery, and meters. Money would refer to your capital and your working costs. Manpower would refer to your human resources. Minutes would refer to your time. And machinery is your working material and consumables and things like those. And meters is also length and the volume and the space of the area within which you operate in. Now, these resources need to be managed in such a way that they enable the organization to be successful and to reach their target and to reach their strategic goals. Now, in certain environment where you find that there are other resources that are not properly managed, you might find that if the human resources, for example, is not properly managed, it can also affect all other aspects of the environment. So it's important that adequate time is given to all the resources so that they are managed properly. Time can also be another factor. If time is not managed properly in any organization, we know that time is money, and time can also mean that you might be seen as running an unprofessional organization if you don't manage time accordingly. Now, earlier on we spoke about organizing as one important aspect. Now, when we're organizing, we also spoke about delegation of authority and span of control. Now, delegation is a process which managers use to transfer authority and responsibility into positions below them. There are several reasons why managers would delegate in their environment. One is to transfer skills or for training purposes. The other one is when there is a need to carry out more important work that reflect organization's objectives. And the other one is to save time and utilize organizational resources, i.e. human resources, which is your people. Now, when you look at delegation of authority, we often have a sense that you don't delegate your responsibility because you'll still be accountable for the output that you've delegated. Sometimes managers find it difficult to delegate. And one or some of the reasons it is difficult for managers to delegate is the issue of trust. So when managers don't trust that their employees are equipped in terms of the skills that they can be delegated certain responsibilities, they feel that they may not be able to do the job as perfectly as they would want them to be. Another reason could be managers fear to be outsmarted by their subordinates, and that is the reason why they would withhold and not want to delegate. One other reason the managers don't delegate is because of time, because when you delegate, you need to make sure that the person you delegate to is well trained and is well skilled in the responsibility that you're delegating. So it might take time to train a person, but once that person is trained, then it's easy to delegate. So managers find themselves running through time management in terms of giving themselves time to train people so that they can be able to delegate to their staff members. So for managers to improve on their delegation skills, I think one important aspect is just to transfer skills at the beginning and to train employees in such a way that you can trust and you can have confidence enough that you can delegate. However, when you look at delegation, there are certain things that cannot be delegated to. And one of them is personal requests. You cannot delegate personal requests really to your subordinates. Subordinates are there to go, are not there to go fetch your dry clean or to make tea and coffee. So we cannot really delegate such things. One, and the other one is that in crisis situations, where there is a crisis situation, you wouldn't want to delegate because crisis means that there is an urgent matter that needs to be attended to. Now, you might find that not everybody is equipped to work under pressure. So you don't want to delegate when there is a lot of pressure and people may not be able to actually do what they need to do because they cannot handle that particular pressure. Also, disciplinary actions cannot be delegated because this is a primary function of managers. So do not avoid the situation of having to discipline somebody by delegating it to a subordinate. We cannot delegate giving feedback. Feedback is also important because when giving feedback, some of the information or that you want to, or the true meaning of the feedback that you want to give to employees might actually get lost, when it is being transferred by a third party. So it's important that we are aware that certain things cannot be delegated. Personal requests in situations of crisis, disciplinary actions, but also giving feedback are some of the things that you cannot delegate. Now, looking at the span of control and the levels of hierarchy, each layer of authority from top to bottom of the organization is called a level of hierarchy or authority. The position of employees within the hierarchy indicates their status and authority. Those at the top have more responsibility and accountability than those at the lower levels. Tall organizational structures have many levels of hierarchy where flatter structures have fewer. Tall organization structures face several challenges, and one of them is inflexibility. We know that when there is a tall hierarchy, sometimes it's difficult for decisions to be taken because they really need to go through certain levels in terms of the hierarchy before it can be implemented. Another disadvantage is there is an issue of the them and us. So people at the lower level might see themselves as aloof from people at the top levels of the organizations, and the hierarchy might increase remotely from the top management. So when there's a long hierarchy, people who are at the bottom might feel that top management is quite aloof and isolated. So it is them and the us. And that makes it difficult then for the organization to work as a team because there are so many levels of hierarchy within that particular organization. The span of control is the number of people directly accountable and reporting to one manager. It is normally agreed that a wider span of control and the fewer levels of hierarchy the business needs. The figure 3.A shows a wider span of control, which is 1 and 2 managers to 1, and at the bottom then you can see that there is actually a number of employees reporting to 2. So this is a wider span of control, however, the structure is flat. Figure 4.A, you can see it's a tall hierarchy which has a lower span of control. Early management theories argued that any span in excess of 6 would result in ineffective supervision. But later this was modified to a span of 4 to 10 for managerial functions and 8 to 15 at the lower levels of the organization. Argument for wide span of control. It says delegation. It can be a more important part of how the organization is managed. Those at the top of the hierarchy have less obvious control over subordinates, and the distance between the layers of management is less. Communicating information cascades effectively. Cost can also be reduced as there will be fewer management levels. And there could be delayering of certain levels of management, and that could also reduce costs. Different approaches to management, which includes delegating and micromanaging. Employee management through micromanaging each employee's workload makes it easier to monitor individual progress and swiftly correct observable errors or deficiencies in workflow. Equipping and enabling is another approach to management. The theory behind the equip and enable method of employee management is that people do better at anything when they are properly trained and equipped. So when people feel they're properly trained and they are equipped and empowered, that can increase productivity level and they are proficient in doing what they need to do. Now, when you look at micromanaging, there are some employees who are actually not very comfortable with being micromanaged. We often hear in work environment when you say, my boss is micromanaging me. So because that gives a feeling that your boss doesn't trust you when they micromanage. However, there are advantages to micromanaging, because when you micromanage, it means should there anything go wrong, then you are well aware in time to act swiftly and correct the inefficiencies within the workflow. Another approach to management is scheduling and setting goals. This approach is the easiest to implement for the owner of small to medium-sized enterprises. Now, for those of us who are owning small, medium enterprises would know that when you set goals and you schedule, then it means that the time that you spend within that particular schedule or within that particular workflow, then it is timed in terms of the hours. So you find in the consulting environment where you say people are paid per hour or people are paid per day. So when you set goals and you schedule the goals, this needs to be done within a week, then you know that within a week this needs to be done, and this is the kind of allowance or payment that needs to go in a week. So people who are working in consultancies, people who are running SMEs, they find it easier to schedule and to set goals in terms of how they manage their businesses. Now let's look at the second module, which is group decision making. There are situations wherein sometimes in organizations there is a necessity for decisions to be made as a collective in terms of a group decision making. And when we go through this section, we'll see at different aspects in terms of how committees are formed, a democratic way of making decisions and the majority, and some of the advantages and disadvantages of group decision making. It is said here that this is a situation faced when individuals collectively make a choice from the alternatives before them. The decision is then no longer attributable to a single individual who is a member of the group. So according to the idea of synergy, decisions made collectively tend to be more effective than decisions made by a single individual. However, there are also examples where the decisions made by a group are flawed. There are other disadvantages of group decision making, and two of the greatest disadvantages is the size of the group and distractions in reaching desired goals. It can also be time consuming, but also groups may tend to make decisions that are more extreme than those of its individual members. Also, another aspect in terms of group decision is that you find that other individuals are not able to give input in terms of group decision makings as they fear to look different or to have different views and different ideas. Now there is an element also of the psychology of the majority, that you go with the majority without necessarily going with the best decision, which could be one of the disadvantages of group decision making. Effective group decision-making strategies include brainstorming, and brainstorming involves a group of members who suggest ideas or alternative courses of action. Now, when we brainstorm is when we just throw ideas without necessarily judging or critiquing the ideas, but we throw as many ideas and alternatives to the ideas as possible, and all the ideas would then be judged at a later stage when everybody has had an opportunity to say what their views and opinions are in terms of the suggestions or the decisions that need to be made. We also have what we call electronic brainstorming. We've got the Delphi method. We also have other methods that include consensus decision-making, voting-based methods, which range from democracy and majority. We are not going to go into details in terms of that, but this is just an example of what decision-making strategies could be. You find that in most organizations, brainstorming is the one that is mostly used in terms of decision-making at certain levels of the organization. Effective group decision-making strategies can also use committees, and committees, it's described as a group of persons committed to a particular cause or goal. And the nature of committees is that some committees undertake managerial functions and others do not. So some committees have got the power to make decisions, but some committees do not. They can merely view opinions and give alternative decisions, but necessarily make the final decision. So some decisions and others merely deliberate on problems without authority to decide. Some committees have authority to make recommendations to a manager who may or may not accept them, and others are formed purely to receive information without making recommendations or decisions whatsoever. Now we still have a lot of disadvantages or advantages also to committees. The use of committees systems may enhance efficiency and effectiveness in the discharge of leadership responsibilities in decision making. Committees may be formed or used only to give credibility to decisions already taken by their leaders. And this is one disadvantage actually of committees, where committees are merely used as a sounding board and they're not making really decisions, because if they are used to give credibility to decisions that are already made, we might as well not have the committee, as it's just rubber stamping decisions that are made somewhere else. And the use of committee system may unnecessarily create bureaucratic bottlenecks, thereby slowing the operations of the organization. We know that we operate in a fast-moving environment, and the business is moving at a fast pace. Now, decisions sometimes need to be made quicker. So committees sometimes form that bottleneck in terms of decisions that need to be made within the operations, and that might make the organization lose competitiveness in terms of the business environment. So we need to be careful in terms of the committees that we have within our organizations, but also the powers that we give to committees within the organizations. Moving on to ethical values for business solutions. Now, when you look at the issue of values, values are really the guiding principles of how we run our businesses. And in certain organizations, we want to have values that long-term, that will withstand the test of time. And we want to have values that can actually be transferred from generation to generation of a company. There is an element of ethics as well within the value structure of organization. And we say here that ethic means different things to different people, but generally it boils down to a basic sense of societal right and wrong. So within the business context, it involves making decisions that align with that sense of right and wrong, as well with the law. Now, when we look at corporate South Africa, I think we are in a challenging situation with all the changes that are happening. Now, the ethics of the company becomes one of the most important elements in terms of running an organization, especially in leadership aspects, because where we find that leadership's ethics are questioned, that can put a damper in terms of how the organization is run, but in terms of the credibility of the organization and the profile that the organization might have worked to put. So it's important that as leaders, as we said earlier, we lead by example, but we pay attention to the ethics and the values of our organization. An ethical dynamic existing in today's business world would include discrimination, and discrimination could really be in different forms. It could be discrimination based on gender, discrimination based on race, discrimination based on disabilities. So it's important that within our values and our ethical structures, we pay attention that we don't discriminate, even if it's something that we are not aware of. We look at side deals as well. You might be running an organization with shareholders that are not aware of certain deals that are taking place within the organization. So that also bridges in terms of the trust and the ethical values of the organization. We're looking at business partners. When we're running a business, a small business, especially with business partners, you might want to include all your business partners in important decisions that are made within the organization. Otherwise, it might be seen as also an ethical breach and also lack of trust within the business partners. There are also issue of gross negligence. When we are board members sitting in a board, whatever that the board agreed to, what we sign in terms of the agreement and the decision made by the board, it's binding to everybody that sits in that board. So we want to make sure that when you sit in a board, you understand what is happening, what you sign for is actually what you agree to in terms of, because when later something happens, it would be gross negligence for you not to have paid attention to whatever that was discussed or the decision that was made during board meetings. Values for business success. Now let's look behind every successful, honest business, and you will see that a set of values that have stood the test of time. One of those values will include honesty. There is an old age saying that says, trust is earned, and once trust has been lost, it's difficult to regain. So these are some of the values that we do have, but sometimes we don't live the values. So it's important that when you have those values in terms of our business structures or in an employee workbook, as we call it, we need to leave the values. Now, honesty is an important value because as a leader, once you're not honest, then it means you're not trustworthy. And once that trust is lost, then it becomes difficult for you to even lead the organization because no one trusts your decisions. Integrity is also one important value that for business success. Quality, so quality could be the quality of your products, the quality of your services, the manner in which you treat your customers also alludes to quality. And quality in anything actually that you do could be the quality of your presentation, quality of the memo that you send around in terms of how you communicate, also builds to integrity. And responsibility. Earlier on, we spoke about delegating of authority, and I indicated that when we delegate authority, we don't delegate your accountability and responsibility. When you delegate certain tasks that need to be taken by subordinates, you still are accountable for the outcome of the tasks. So responsibility is something that needs to be inculcated within the structures of the organization from top to the lower level. I've already spoken a little bit about trust. And respect also is one important value of organization, and it actually goes a long way. And we don't respect when there is lack of integrity. Employees don't respect when they don't honestly trust. So when you look at all those values, they're building onto one another. And respect could really mean a lot of things to different people, but really treating every human being fairly could mean that you respect them. Teamwork is also important in our work environment. When you talk about delegation, when you delegate, but also that delegation enhances or actually builds a positive team spirit and teamwork within the work environment. Leadership, the value of leadership in terms of how do we lead. We often hear the saying that says it rots from the head. So if our leadership is not that of integrity, it's not credible, and they don't have those values that we aspire to, then chances are we find things falling apart within the organization. And when that happens, we look at who the leader is. So it's important that as leaders, we act with integrity, but we also are responsible in terms of instilling that culture of integrity within our work environment. We also have corporate citizenship. I think as an organization, we also want to be seen and admired by other citizens in terms of for giving a workplace that is safe for our employees, but also being of corporate citizen in terms of the social contribution that we have within the environment that we operate in. Shareholder value. Every business also operates because there is a shareholder value that you want to bring to your customers, but also to your shareholders. So without profitability, there is no company. So every employee should understand how he or she fits into the bigger picture of the profitability of the company. And through all these values, then we're able then to say everybody within the organization is important and they contribute somewhere down the line to the profitability of the company. Now, having values, as we said earlier, it's important for employees to be taken through the values so that they live the values in their day-to-day operations. Now, moving on, we're looking at the socio-political environment of business management. As we said earlier, that you operate in a diverse business environment, and sometimes we find that some of the social and political changes that happen in our environment also affect the business that we run. So we need to be aware of the changes in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, so that we also align ourselves in our businesses in terms of what changes we have. Now, when you look at business environment and analysis, this is the foundation of every business. Have you ever wondered why business crumbles? And with the perfect budget, the perfect planning, and everything in place, but you find that sometimes business just doesn't crack it. Chances are there hasn't been an environmental analysis that was conducted before that business starts, because the analysis means it's the foundation of every business. Without that foundation, the business might find itself trading on shaky grounds. Now, business analysis is meant to help identify internal and external organizational factors that impact on business. And the internal factors are those factors that you do have control over, and they might be related to your business, which means that you've got a semblance of control over them. But external factors, you unfortunately don't have control over them. As we said earlier, your political environment, you don't have control over them. Our economic environment, we don't have control over them. However, you're expected to operate within that aspects. And with that awareness, we learn to either live amongst or adjust ourselves according to the external environment that we operate within. External factors, as indicated, would be our political systems. I think in South Africa we live in an interesting political environment where every weekend there could be a different minister. And within those political changes, there also is an impact in terms of our economy. Now we need to be aware of how that impacts on how we run our businesses, so that when there is any change within the political system, we can then align ourselves and we can then be able to operate with flexibility without those political systems. We also have government policies or government laws that also impact on how we run our businesses. To mind comes our employment equity laws. There are ever so other many laws that we need to take cognizance of in terms of operating, so that we are also law-abiding citizens within the environments that we operate in. Taxes and interest rates also affect our businesses. Social classes and lifestyles also affect our businesses. And I think mostly so when you look at social classes and lifestyles in terms of the property market, certain lifestyles and certain customers or will have an indication in terms of where to buy and when to buy because of the social class or the social lifestyle. So when you pitch your business to different social classes or people with different social lifestyles, you need to be aware of those differences so that your product or your services are custom made to those particular classes and lifestyles. Technological developments also has an impact, and climate changes also have impact in terms of how we run our business. We've got a lot of other political factors which I will not go through, but we're looking at the bureaucracy, we're looking at corruption levels in the political sphere, also has an impact, tariffs, educational law, empowerment law, environmental laws, health and safety issues, we've got competition regulations, and if you are not aware of these political factors, unfortunately you might find yourself not being able to be competitive enough within the environment because you haven't taken cognizance of all these factors and the impact thereof in terms of the business. Social factors affecting business. We spoke about lifestyles and social classes. We also have buying habits. You've got to be aware of buying habits of your potential customers so that you can then pitch your services and your products according to their needs. We've got educational levels. We've got emphasis also on safety, health consciousness, religion and beliefs, average and disposable income levels, and also social classes as indicated earlier. So these are some of the aspects of the social factors affecting our business. We've got family size and family structures, attitudes towards saving and investing, attitude towards green and ecological products, attitude towards renewable energy, age distribution and the life expectancy rates, attitudes towards imported products and services, attitudes towards work, career, leisure and retirement, and attitudes towards customer service and product quality. Now, looking at all these political aspects and the social factors affecting our business, it makes it easy when you are aware of them so that your services are then aligned somehow within those factors so that your customers could then be drawn to your services because their needs would have been met by the fact that you know actually what they need. Now, when you look at the issue of staffing your estate agency, there are several aspects that you need to look at in terms of staffing your agency. Below is a list of things to look for when staffing your property agency. One is assess the amount of staff that you will need. And this will depend on the size of the estate agency or the enterprise. 2, source qualified help from reputable agencies. We've got a lot of recruitment agencies that you might want to utilize out there. So it's important that you look at the reputation of the staffing agencies before you can actually contract them to help you with the staffing of your agency or your enterprise. And while we have reputable agencies, but we also need to do some background checks in terms of your staff, because recruitment agency may not be able to do certain background checks. Allow ample amount of time to search and secure the right staff. This can take up to 3 months to secure the right staff, so don't rush the process, because you want to get somebody or the staff members that also actually be able to withstand the test of time, and sustainability becomes important in terms of retention of those particular skills. So it's important to take your time before you actually appoint, so that you know that you're appointing the right caliber according to the requirements of your agency. Running a background check is also important. I've already alluded to that. So you validate that the candidate has legal working status. Still on your staffing, you hire according to the set requirements, and below we've got just some attributes that you might want to look at. One of them is diversity, and diversity really would also mean that you look at the diversified work environment that you operate in, the diversified nature of your customers, because also people would want to serve by people that they are comfortable with. So diversity then becomes important. Entrepreneurial flair is also one important aspect in terms of your attribute, in terms of the person that you might want to employ. Sales skills, or at least an aptitude to learn, an ability to work in a team. And I think another one would also be an ability to work under pressure. That would be something that you might want to look at. The candidate must be willing to abide by the requirements of the estate agency board and the legislation thereof. Create an operating staff service budget to support the seamless running of your property. You don't want to go big and hire a lot of people, and 3 months down the line you find that there is some kind of shortages in terms of wages that need to be paid. And there's also some educational requirement that you might want to consider, which would be your further education and training certificate in the real estate. So this you might want to consider actually also when you are looking at the appropriate person that you want to employ within your agency or within your enterprise. I think I've come to the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time, and please remember to complete your 10 multiple choice questions in order to obtain your CPD points. Thank you.